It looks like the Russians are attacking everywhere.
Tank went off, hit us, and that was it.
There's one thing in training, and then there's another thing when you're, as we call it, being in the shit.
It's always gonna suck, so you gotta start enjoying it eventually.
Hi everyone, my name is Zhenya Melnik, and this is the episode 2 of our premiere program. Today we have two guests in our studio, and this is Fes and Damien. They both left their homes in order to help Ukrainians fight against the Russians. And Fes, a year ago, he was fighting under Kupiansk, where there he lost both his legs due to the injury, and now he's going through the medical commission to be back on the front line. Damian came to Ukraine a bit earlier in 2018. He served with the Marine Corps, and now he's leading the reconnaissance group. So guys, it's very nice to see you. Today, guys, we're gonna watch our latest report from the outskirts of Bakhmut, where we worked with the 92nd Brigade, their drone assault unit. So we're gonna watch it now, and then we're gonna discuss it, and then talk about Eastern Frontline, the drone warfare, and stuff like that. So attention on the screen, and
In the grey light of dawn, we drive south of Bakhmut in a trophied Russian Tiger. The enemy greets us with fire.
The unit is preparing for the work. They're setting up antennas, the drones are ready to fly. The position we are at used to belong to the Russians. This is a very dangerous place, as the enemy is about 2 kilometers from us.
Заряжай мне бомбочку.
Не прошла команда, прикинь.
Еще раз нажми.
Да, сейчас буду.
The first attempt fails. The Russian electronic warfare scrambles the signal, and the drop-off mechanism responds with a delay.
They use a signal jamming system that covers an area of 100 by 100 meters, like a dome. It's almost impossible to fly there.
Code 92 has been deployed to the Bakhmut area since January. There, they kept the Wagner troops away from the notorious Road of Life, the last artery for Ukrainians to bring supplies and evacuation. Out of this trio, Becha is the most experienced. As a kid, he dreamt of reconnaissance. His dream came true, but so did his biggest fear.
To be honest, when I decided to work in reconnaissance, my biggest fear was getting blown up and becoming disabled. But when it happened, there was no time to cry. Amidst all the shock and adrenaline, while I was still being transported to the hospital, I already fully understood what had happened. Well, now it's done. What can you do?
guys, prior that we move to the discussion of the episode, I would like to ask you maybe to give our viewers the better understanding. Where have you been deployed to, and what have you been doing recently? So, Faz, I would like to start with you.
Yeah, I was mainly just in and around Kupiansk, towards Novoseletsky. And then, yeah, got hit. And then now recently just been getting back used to, well, walking again, really, going through the medical process. So that means I can actually go back and work.
If I may ask you, could you say what happened exactly? How did you get this injury?
Well, we were assaulting a Russian position, and then we took a few casualties, started to withdraw, and the first body went out, a few casualties were taken out, and then just tank went off, hit us, and that was it. A few people ended up dying, and yeah, I ended up having to put tourniquets on myself and sustain myself for nearly an hour before anybody could reach me and get me out of there.
Nevertheless, you are still, as you said, going to the through medical checkups. So if I may ask, what is your plan? How do you see yourself in the Ukrainian army?
Well, more than likely it's going to be something to do with drones.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to go back to being assaulting positions and reconnaissance, but that's not really an option at the moment. So yeah, it's more than likely going to be drones.
Okay, thank you. And we're gonna switch to Damian. Damian, give us a little bit of the idea. What have you been doing so far?
Sure. So, like you said, I joined back in summer 2018. I did 3 years. After completing my 3 years, I went back home. The full invasion happened, came back. And from there, I've been working in Mykolaiv region, Kherson region. And once Kherson was taken, the city, we started working on the right bank of the Dnipro. About 2 months ago, we were redeployed to Donbass in the Makivka area.
Since we already approached the topic of Donbass, so as we can see from report, the Bakhmut direction still remains one of the most difficult and the hottest direction of the Eastern Front. What do you guys feel? How is situation developing there? What is your impression?
Well, I think it's just how it's been recently in most areas where it's slowly turning into, again, trench warfare due to the winter. But this time it's going to be with a lot more drones. So you need men in the trenches to hold the position, but then they're just going to be flying drones back and forth at each other the whole time.
Yeah.
It's the new age of warfare.
And Damien, what's your evaluation, I would say?
Oh, at the moment, it looks pretty much neither side can advance, substantially. So pretty much it looks like the Russians are attacking everywhere just to see where the weak spots are at. Obviously, they're concentrating in Avdiivka at the moment. Tough place. The environment, the terrain here in Donbass is just, it's hard for offense and defense.
I guess I want to address this question to you, Damien. Since you're head of the Specialist Reconnaissance Unit, what kinds of methods and maybe know-hows are you guys implying?
Drones are becoming more and more used. I started using drones back in 2015. And they've developed quite a ways from then. And the newest thing we're trying to use the drones now is to work with FPVs to set up a relay system on the FPV so that you have more extension on the FPV.
And also, I remember you mentioned that you kind of like worked close with the Stug anti-tank unit. Is it also linked with the drones somehow? Could you also...
Sure. Again, so with that, we're using the FPV, we're using Mavics along with our ground anti-tank units. So with the Mavic, of course, we're spotting the targets. Then we're disabling them with the FPVs and finishing them off with the Stugna or anti-tank teams.
We see that drones are super effective, right? But it all, in the end, comes down to the guys in trenches. Do you guys see the potential for drones to be basically a substitute for the infantry on the ground?
I don't think any sort of machinery can ever replace infantry. So maybe 100 years ago, the tank may have replaced infantry or something, but it just never has. There's always been a need for soldiers having eyes on, being directly there. And maybe with further advancements in drones, with longer distance, longer battery life, everything, maybe it may slow down the need for infantry, but there's always going to be a need for them.
I agree with that. Infantry is always going to be needed until we get AI systems to the level of, that we can use it on the ground, that it's cheap enough to use on the ground. We're always going to need bodies, for sure.
So we see now that the Russians have been more active recently. It started with the Kupiansk direction again in summer, now Avdiivka. And especially, I would like to concentrate now on Avdiivka because we know it's been very brutal in there, and both sides are losing a lot of people. I'm not even talking machinery. So, what do you guys think of the current situation down there? Maybe you know someone who's there, because I know you guys haven't been.
I think the Russians are just trying to take as much ground as possible before the winter, so that means they have the opportunity to dig in before the ground gets too hard.
So that's for like the tactical, I guess, importance. But what do you guys think is the strategic meaning for Russians to take this part of the front line?
They're just trying to get as much ground as possible because Ukraine have put a lot of their resources a lot further south. And so the Russians have seen that as an opportunity to move in these more northern directions and primarily knock out as much Western equipment as possible. So that means they feel more safe and secure, and it gives them more of a motivation to advance.
Avdiivka is actually a pretty strategic area. It's one of the only bulges in the Russian line. You have that bulge there. For Ukrainians, it's the gateway to Donetsk, the city. As you can see, right after Avdiivka, you have a lot of train railways. You have a few more villages, bigger villages, and then you have the city. For Russians, they want to push Ukraine out of this pocket so that they can give more of a buffer zone to Donetsk and get our artillery and our mortars out of that area, try to push them back further.
I would agree also. And my question would be, what do you think Ukraine could have done better to maybe be better prepared for this assault?
Well, it's hard to say in hindsight, you know. Avdiivka has been under Ukrainian control for a while. We all know that it's been fortified since, 2014, 15? It's a long front line. We can't defend every single place, but I really can't say what they could do better there. They're doing their best with what they have right now.
So there's been a lot of talk that in the beginning of war, Russia was presenting themselves as the second army of the world. They were so sure in their invincibility. Then, after successful Ukrainian counteroffensives in both Kharkiv and Kherson, this, I would say, like image kind of got ruined. But now it seems that Russians kind of learn on their mistakes and they're becoming stronger. Do you feel it's like that also, or what's your opinion?
I think they kept a lot of their stronger stuff back, especially since the start, because they were worried from the NATO response. But now that they've seen NATO isn't going to get directly involved, they're definitely pouring a lot more resources and some of their more specialized equipment into these areas and using more unique tactics to advance, rather than just trying to bulldoze their way through like they did at the start. And yeah, they are learning from a lot of their mistakes and adapting, and they're doing that pretty well.
I would say it varies. For instance, in Avdiivka and Makiivka, they still use that same column type strategy or tactic, but it depends what brigade, what battalion you're dealing with. Overall, yes, of course, they've been getting more resources. North Korea is now helping them with munitions. China's been already helping them with munitions. Iran, they're getting it much faster than we can. Yes, in a way, they are improving, but in another way, they're still kind of, from time to time, using that same, just throwing as much as they can at you.
Because of that, so they have, we can say, almost the unlimited human resources. And I guess in terms of ammo also, because we know they have their own production. So do you think it's actually possible? Is it real that Ukraine can win such a big army? And what do we need to do to reach that point, I guess?
Yeah, that is a pretty good question. I mean, Ukraine was supposed to lose within 3 days. That was the world's guess, but they've definitely proven that they're more than capable of withstanding against Russian aggression. But it's just a guessing game to see how it goes forward. Whether we're going to continue to be supplied by Western countries, or is that aid going to run out eventually?
Yeah, it's a tough situation. Hard to say what will happen. Of course, Ukraine will pretty much fight to the end, I think. And that's one thing that Ukraine has on Russia, is that we have the will. Everybody knows what we need. And it's just a matter of will they provide it and how fast will they provide it.
You mentioned that the Ukrainian strong point is the will. However, we all, I mean, me personally, I travel a lot to the front line, I speak to the soldiers. I see the overall fatigue growing, not just within the military, but also in West. People, civilian people, are getting also tired of the Ukrainian war narrative. I would like to ask you both guys, you're still here and you seem very motivated. How do you keep your motivation high.
It's always going to suck, so you got to start enjoying it eventually. So there's always a reason for it to hurt, or you just don't want to do something, and just kind of get over it and just carry on.
Motivation for this is, like I said, this is a pivotal point in history, and if Russia takes Ukraine, everybody knows they won't stop there, and they will keep going.
There's an opinion that I've heard from many Westerners that Ukrainian armed forces, they tend to use the Western soldiers as an extractors, even they would rather be fighting. So, and I can see why, because it could be very complicated having some Westerners incorporated in like battalion or brigade. Brigade doesn't speak English, so it seems like complex. Could you guys explain how it actually works? How is your experience being like fighting in the Ukrainian army?
I mean, I've got a few friends who are fully in full Ukrainian brigades, and they don't speak a lick of Ukrainian. A lot of it is interpreters, and but it's a lot easier than what you'd think when it comes to just being on the battlefield, not speaking the same language. You all know what you should be doing. You understand your kind of job role, and a lot of it is just pointing, shouting, and you kind of get the idea very quickly.
Okay. Damien.
Yeah, no, he's right. I've been in Syria where nobody spoke English, and got along fine there, and came here in 2018, joined the Marines, and had no way to communicate, so I had to learn the language. In a recon unit, yeah, it's a bit different. It's a bit more difficult if you don't know the language, because you're constantly having to pass through information. So luckily, I did have one or two Ukrainians that spoke pretty good English and was able to help me out there.
So you experienced the Ukrainian army from the inside, and what are the strong sides of it, and what needs improvement? Can we talk about this a little bit?
I think it's mainly just lower level stuff. Like on the battlefield, everybody has the motivation not to die and wanting to take positions and everything, but it's mainly just, people just stupid low level stuff. People not really wanting to wash up the dishes or something like that in the FOB or something like that, and then that just causes small arguments and just unnecessary things, and it's.
Yeah, it's sometimes I have a feeling that soldiers are. It's like summer kid camp. Sometimes it's funny, but yeah. Damian, what do you have to?
As far as I could see, is communication between brigades and battalions. We were recce, so we would have to find out who's on our left, who's on our right, who's in front of us, and a lot of times nobody knew. So we would have to go out and actually physically see who's there. We would run into a Ukrainian unit, and we would have to get all the intel from them, what battalion, what brigade, what rota, and how many on position, and we would have to come back and report this.
Actually, that's another good point. Like, nobody likes saying when they're putting it over the radio when they've launched a drone, and so it takes about half an hour to find out whose drone it is, and you're hiding from it. It's just to find out it's a friendly one.
Yeah, also, no, I also seen that. But Damien, you've seen Ukrainian army since 2018, and you're here now again. How did it evolve during this time?
Well, from when I came, it was a different war. Very much more static, more recon being used, more small sabotage groups being used. There weren't full-on assaults. So as far as the evolution, it evolved from a pretty much static army to now a mobile army, is what I've seen. And also they've improved technology and improved their capabilities, and with new weaponry coming from the West, they've learned this weaponry and now are using it effectively.
I guess you guys may have seen Ukrainians using the Western equipment. How do you evaluate the Ukrainian soldiers' skills in terms of using the new weapon?
I mean, the main problem with a lot of it is a lot of this equipment is very high-end, expensive, very complicated, and you're supposed to go through years and years of training before you see combat with it. But there's no time for that, and that's the main problem. And they have been able to do some pretty substantial things with the equipment, and they have been able to do pretty well with it, and then in some places not so well.
It was like Fez said, the equipment is more complicated. It's more technology in the equipment, so you have to understand all the electronic components. The other big thing is repairing these vehicles once they have been disabled. But as far as the Ukrainians, with the limited time they're given to learn these systems and being put straight into combat, I would say they're doing damn well.
You mentioned like the lack of time to prepare the soldiers. We know that there are multiple actually newly created brigades, and on average they would have like 6 to 8 months to be trained, not just to be deployed somewhere like second, third line, but they're going straight on in the assault missions. What do you think, guys? Is it possible to train someone from zero to the assault troop in this time?
It's definitely doable, but the problem is sending them straight to the front immediately. I mean, it's good in the sense of like they have high morale, they're well equipped, and they're well trained. But then the problem is that they're not desensitized to it. So the second they see it actually happening, then they start to panic, and then that's where they forget all their training. And I do think a lot of it requires a slower introduction into the field. Like my first few missions were very calm, just kind of observing positions where we can place mortars, where we can launch drones from, and then, just getting used to it before then assaulting, and that definitely helped for me.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, it's doable, of course. Is it optimal? Probably not. There's one thing in training, and then there's another thing when you're, as we call it, being in the shit. Could be the best trained person in the world, but once the mortars, tanks, and artillery start hitting, nobody knows how they will act in the first time.
Actually, you mentioned that it's Donbas region, the east of Ukraine, is very difficult terrain-wise. And having experience in a flat steppes of South Ukraine, how do you compare these two regions? And do Russian tactics also differ from one place to another?
So comparatively, the area that we were working near Makivka is almost about the same. Rolling hills with a lot of tree breaks, just more forests here. And here it's a lot different than the south, because here it's much more dug in, and the line's already drawn pretty much here.
Yeah. And did you guys have a chance to experience Ukraine outside of war? I mean, culture, tradition, in that sense?
I mean, yeah, when I had first arrived, I was able to visit family and just kind of sit around eating Ukrainian traditional food, salo, borscht, all that. And then as well, after I was injured, going to Zakarpattia to get prosthesis done there. That's mountains and everything are beautiful there. It's really nice. But I haven't had as much time as I'd like to actually explore the country and see everything.
Cool. Okay. I hope you have time for that, actually. And Damian, too. I mean, you've been around for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
So how is Ukraine treating you, and what maybe did you learn? How was your experience in here?
Oh, I love Ukraine. I've traveled pretty well around the country. The only place I haven't been yet is Carpathia, which hopefully I'll be going soon.
Mm-hmm.
But I love it here. People are great. Very hospitable. I myself live in the south, in Odessa. So, I love Odessa, especially during the summer.
Mm-hmm. All right. And we have in Ukraine actually a big debate now as for like the civilian life, because in big cities, war is almost not there. Bars open and restaurant also open. How do you feel about that? Do you think civilians in bigger cities should live their lives, or should it be more humble and subtle? What's your opinion on that?
I think people should have the opportunity to be able to live their life, but they shouldn't full on pretend that there isn't a war. Because once your country's been invaded, you can't exactly do nothing and say nothing. It's good because a lot of people do volunteer, a lot of people try to help with different things, and but you just can't stop everybody's life all of a sudden, and that was mainly learned throughout COVID and everything, and you can't exactly just lock everybody up and say, no, you can't do that because of this.
Okay, yeah, it's a good answer, I think. Damien, what's with you?
It's a fine line, you know. Of course, people need to be able to live their lives. Plus, the economy needs to keep going. But then you have where people take it a little bit too far. In my opinion, look, it's a free country. You should be able to do what you think is best for you. But in a wartime, it's tough. It's tough. I don't really have a strong opinion either way. I think people should be able to live their lives, even though there's a war here. For people's mentality's sake, they should be able to have fun.
Talking about mentality, you've both been through a lot, especially you, Fes. I don't know, how do you keep your sanity, I guess, going? What do you do?
I mean, a lot of it is, I realized very quickly that you can't exactly hyper-focus on things that's happened or things that's going to happen. Otherwise, you just start to panic about unnecessary things. If you just kind of focus on what's going on now and then deal with the situations as they come, then it makes life a lot easier because you're not thinking about past, present, and future. You're just thinking about present.
There are still quite a few people from West that want to serve in Ukraine. However, when they meet the reality of this war, I know a lot of people leave. So my question is, what would you tell to the people who are willing to come fight for Ukraine? What would be your instructions or message to them?
It's war. It's scary. It's terrifying. It's everything that you don't want it to be. And yeah, take into consideration losing limbs, losing life, losing friends. It's always going to suck, and you just got to embrace the suck.
Embrace the suck. Yeah. No, I mean, it's people have an idea of war, and maybe they see like some type of glamour in it. But when the reality hits and your friends are dying next to you, it's different.
I want to ask your family and friends, what do they think or feel? How do they take that you went to the different country to fight in a war that is not a joke, basically? How do they take this?
They think that I'm an idiot. They don't like it too much, but it's, at the end of the day, I'm happy to be here. I like being here, and they just kind of got to get used to that. And sadly enough, but yeah, just try to keep in contact with them, talk to them as much as possible, reassure them.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. And it was the same for me. My parents were like, what's wrong with you? Why? But now after all these years, they're very proud of me and accepting. And like you said, you just keep in contact with them, reassure them. Everything works out good.
All right, guys, it was a great conversation. I really appreciate that you both found time to come here. And I wish you the best of luck. And thanks so much for being here. And I think it's time for us to say goodbye.
So thank you.
Thank
you, guys.